mga kababayan, ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas. Kayang magiliw, Diyos at siratanan, alam ng puso, sa dibdib mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, tuyak ka ng magiting, sa manlulupin, di ka pasisingin, sa ganat ng tugog sa simoy at sa langit kong oraw, ay hinatang tula, kawin sa paglayang minamahal, ang isang ng marawat mo'y nagumpay na nagtitindig, ang inuwi na araw niya, kailan pa may imatitinig, lumalang araw ng walating magsimba, buhay langit sa piling ko, ang inigaya ng pagkay mangabi, at mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
You may now take your seats. To set the stage for this forum, last October 24, 2023, the Philippines, represented by DFA and NEDA and the UN, signed the United Nations Sustainable Development Cooperation Framework, which will run from 2024 to 2028. Now, with this in mind, allow us to look back and relive the President's speech during the signing ceremony of the UN SDCF. Let us all watch this video.
The United Nations Country Coordinator, Mr. Gustavo Gonzalez, our Cabinet Ministers, Foreign Affairs Secretary Ricky Manalo, and our NEDA Secretary, Secretary Arce Balisacan, the officials and personnel of the DFA, NEDA, and the United Nations Country Team, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Let me begin by commending the DFA NEDA and most of all, the UN Resident Coordinator's Office for crafting the new UN Sustainable Development Cooperation Framework that deepens, expands, and elevates the partnership between the Philippines and the United Nations. As a founding member of the United Nations, the Philippines strongly supports the UN as a beacon for multilateral approaches for making lasting peace and progress a reality for all peoples, for all nations. At the UN General Assembly last year, I underscored that no nation stands alone. The achievement of our national ambition requires a global environment that creates conditions that allows nations to thrive and to navigate the challenges of the 21st century. Beyond building better from the pandemic and for resilient communities, the world needs a transformative agenda to bridge divides, address inequalities, and foster growth that carries everyone forward. Especially in this complex global environment, we certainly need the United Nations to thrive in its important work, including at the country level. Here in the Philippines, 17 UN entities serve that task, as with the entire UN development system across the world. Our new cooperation framework covers the period of 2024 to 2028, which coincides the timeline of this administration. As it is oriented to support Philippine government policies and priorities embodied in the 8-point socio-economic agenda, the Philippine Development Plan, and Ambisyon Natin, it enjoins UN agencies in the government's determined pursuit of the highest aspirations of our people. We look forward to vigorous engagements on key issues that bear on the future of our communities, including food security, health, education, climate action, decent work, digital transformation, and disaster risk reduction. We invite new approaches to help promote innovation driven by climate-smart and sustainable growth at all levels. We also are fostering access to green financing lasting peace, and better public services across the archipelago. With the UN delivering as one fully cognizant of the Philippine needs and context, and the voices of its partners, including civil society, our partnership can be a catalyst for the accomplishment of our shared goals in the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. As the UN SDCF is among the first of its kind under the reformed UN development system, our collaboration will showcase the best and finest the UN development system can offer the world with programs that provide solutions and have far-reaching impact and provide good models of co-ownership, transparency, and accountability. The UN SDCF brings with it not only the legacies of the Philippines' constructive and long-standing engagement with the United Nations. It also signifies our role in shaping more inclusive and effective multilateral institutions that embrace and bring tangible results to us all. The UN SDCF also acknowledges how the Philippines' best practices and experience, which we have established over decades, can help the achievement of the SDG agenda elsewhere through South-South cooperation platforms. The UN recognizes that peace-building milestones in the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao offer valuable insights for peacemaking across the world. Our advocacies in the Indo-Pacific and in the global arena for the rule of law and the peaceful settlement of disputes also provide opportunities for a more substantive engagement with the United Nations. These novel aspects of the UN SDCF show how our partnership has evolved. It is now infused with a more mature and outward-looking synergy of efforts, serving the interests of both the Philippines and the United Nations as we work for a safer and more prosperous world. It is truly fitting that we embark on this new journey together as we celebrate the founding of the United Nations 78 years ago. This daunting and profound enterprise of making our collaboration deliver meaningful change and transformation on the ground lies before us. Again, I extend my warmest congratulations to the Department of Foreign Affairs, to NEDA, the UN country team, of course, for an excellent job. I look forward to hearing many more success stories of the Philippines UN partnership under this cooperation framework. Thank you very much, and good afternoon to you all.
Thank you.
We are now ready for today's main forum with the theme Visions for a New Generation Philippines-UN Partnership. Under this forum, our panelists will explore how the UN SDCF envisions a more dynamic and mature partnership between the Philippines and the UN, while underscoring, of course, the importance of fostering inclusive, sustainable development that responds to contemporary challenges and supports strategic priorities of the Philippine government. Now, to talk about partnerships for synergy and solutions, a new age of Philippine-UN cooperation, we are pleased to have with us the Secretary of the Department of Foreign Affairs, Honorable Enrique A. Manalo. Now, with a long and distinguished career in foreign service, Secretary Manalo holds more than 4 decades of experience in the DFA. As an expert in multilateral diplomacy, he has served as the Philippine Permanent Representative to the United Nations in New York prior to his appointment as the Secretary of Foreign Affairs. In recognition of his exceptional service to the country, he was awarded the Order of Lacandula with the rank of Grand Cross Bayani in 2018 and the Gawad Mabini with the rank of Grand Cross Dakilang Kamanong in 2017. Let us all warmly welcome Secretary Enrique Manalo.
Good morning. Secretary Arsenio M. Balisacan of the National Economic and Development Authority, Mr. Gustavo Gonzalez, Resident Coordinator of the United Nations in the Philippines, Ms. Teresa Mondita Lim, Executive Director of the ASEAN Center for Biodiversity, Excellencies, representatives from the diplomatic corps, heads and representatives of UN specialized agencies and programs in the Philippines, colleagues from various government agencies, ladies and gentlemen, good morning again to all of you. It is my great pleasure to welcome all of you to this first UN Day Forum. Last month, on UN Day, on the 24th of October, in the presence, as you have seen, of President Ferdinand Marcos Jr., I signed with NEDA Secretary Balisacan and UN Resident Coordinator Gustavo Gonzalez the Philippines' new UN Sustainable Development Cooperation Framework 2024 to 2028. Both the Philippine government and the United Nations refer to this agreement as the beginning of a new generation partnership. Secretary Balisacan and I published articles to hail its promise to support the Philippines' economic trajectory to become an upper middle income country through economic transformation, upgrading of human capital and technological innovation, and enhanced environmental sustainability and climate resilience. This framework serves as the blueprint for UN's refocused engagement in our country from 2024 to 28. Much has been done to ensure that it is in accordance with the Philippine Development Agenda and fit for purpose for the Philippine context. It embeds the principles of inclusivity, transparency, and accountability that have informed the governance of the UN development system since its reforms in 2019. This is a document that is possibly close to a gold standard in the UN development system and in the history of our cooperation with the UN. However, the department recognizes that the success of this framework does not begin and end with its signing. Far from that. It is the 22 UN agencies in the Philippines under the country team and the many stakeholders in the Philippines who are key to its success. UN entities in the country will align their programs and work with the strategic priorities of the framework in order to advance the national agenda that delivers tangible benefits to the lives of the Filipino people. Its success will rest on the effective implementation and joint monitoring and review of its activities by the government and the UN. Ladies and gentlemen, the department convened this UN Day Forum to help foster an appreciation for the new framework as a living document that should animate our assessment, development, and conduct of UN activities in the country over the next 5 years. It is a prism, a compass, and an anchor. Depending on how well we use this framework as a toolkit, we can create platforms for helping actors at all levels craft empowering solutions, including in communities, thereby generating meaningful outcomes for the growth and equity that the Filipino people aspire for. We can usher in changes where they are needed, and with national and local actors and communities as the agents of change. We invited participants from government, academic, and training institutions, think tanks, civil society, development partners, and other international organizations in the hope that our conversations today can reveal perspectives on how this toolkit can be most meaningful to the Philippines as well as to the UN. Because the Philippines is a country that embraces partnerships. Decades of the Philippines' long engagement with the UN system have derived significant benefits for our country. At the same time, this experience has taught us that the most fruitful partnerships are those forged in solidarity, rooted in visions from the ground, and sustained in their impact. We see the new cooperation framework as a platform for the UN development system to manifest concretely how it delivers effective outcomes in support of the SDG agenda at all levels, in this case, the Philippines. Focusing on the fundamentals and with stronger ownership from stakeholders, new approaches to implement the framework can aim for solutions as well as synergy. And we hope that this forum will only be the beginning of engaging the Filipino public on how we can grow stronger together in this path of partnership. Ladies and gentlemen, government efforts to shape a meaningful cooperation framework and the President's presence at the signing of the agreement were symbolic of the Philippines' support to the United Nations. As one of its founding members, we are invested in the UN system, and we will continue to contribute to its strength and relevance. At the General Assembly last year, I stated that the UN must remain at the center of an inclusive and effective multilateralism that makes progress and peace a reality for all peoples and nations. The UN development system is at the heart of this. In many ways, the framework reflects how our partnership has evolved and matured. For some time, the Philippines has become far more than a recipient of UN assistance. We have been supporting UN agencies through provisions to the local operations of the UNDP and other agencies, while ramping up our voluntary contributions to dozens of UN programs and humanitarian funds for Yemen, Syria, Palestine, the Ukraine, and Afghanistan, and other such funds within our means. Beyond this funding support, we have long reached a level where the Philippines lends its homegrown expertise and best practices to achieve the SDGs through South-South cooperation platforms, including those we host here in the Philippines, such as CIMEO, CIFDEC, and the ASEAN Center for Biodiversity. And next month, we will host Pacific Island nations and other Asian countries to discuss capacity building for arms control. In closing, let me underline that this framework represents a new milestone in the Philippines' long journey with the UN. To echo President Marcos Jr. during the signing ceremony almost 1 month ago today, it has always been about our vision for more humane and inclusive societies and a safer and more prosperous world. This is the very same impetus for the Philippines' candidature for a non-permanent seat on the UN Security Council for the years 2027 to 28. And so I trust that this UN Day Forum will illuminate inspired ideas as we help shape the contours of a new age of Philippine-UN partnership. Thank you, and mabuhay.
Thank you very much, Secretary Manalo, for your message. Our next speaker is an economist with extensive development policy, governance, and administration expertise acquired from over 35 years of professional work as a government official, NGO executive, economic advisor, researcher, professor, and consultant for numerous development agencies. He has also advised and consulted with numerous development agencies and multilateral institutions, including the World Bank, ADB, OECD, ASEAN, and various UN agencies, to discuss scaling up actions on key transitions to accelerate SDG progress. We are pleased to have Honorable Arsenio M. Balisacan, Secretary of the National Economic and Development Authority.
Secretary Ricky Manalo, ASEAN Center for Biodiversity, Executive Director Teresa Lim, of course, our UN Resident Coordinator, Mr. Gustavo Gonzalez, my colleagues from the government, and all of the guests of today's UN Days Forum, a pleasant morning to all. The Philippines' commitment to accelerate progress and the attainment of the Sustainable Development Goals is founded on the guiding frameworks of the Philippine Development Plan 2023 to 2028 and the United Nations Sustainable Development Cooperation Framework, or UN SDCF, for 2024 to 2028. The alignment of these two critical documents symbolizes the profound synergy of aspirations and efforts between the Republic of the Philippines and the United Nations. This partnership has steadily propelled us toward our shared vision of sustainable development. The PDP 2023 to 2028 is the linchpin of our nation's medium-term socioeconomic agenda. The document charting the course for transformative growth and development. This plan, which ultimately seeks to ensure a strongly rooted, comfortable, and secure life for all Filipinos, as articulated in the country's long-term vision or the Ambition Natin 2040, lays down strategies to foster inclusive and sustainable economic growth, promote social equity, and prioritize environmental stewardship. The PDP aligns national objectives with the UN's 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. In parallel, the recently signed UNSDCF builds upon the foundations of the PDP and complements the government's efforts to bolster progress in development. The signing of this cooperation framework marked a significant milestone as it signified a renewed commitment to our partnership with the UN. NEDA, in particular, guided by the contributions from other agencies, reviewed the PDP's strategies to see which areas we could scale up with the UN's assistance. We see these efforts reflected in what are now the framework's three strategic priorities. Strategy Priority 1, which mirrors and builds upon the PDP pillar on developing and protecting capabilities of individuals and families, prioritizes cooperation areas that would enhance the sensitivity of agriculture programs to improve the efficiency of marketing and distribution of nutritious foods. This strategic priority hopes to address one of the most fundamental issues experienced by every Filipino household. In 2019, the proportion of households meeting 100% of the recommended energy intake was 19.5%, down from 31.7% in 2013 and far from the 45.5% target by 2030. Given its expertise and extensive network, the UN can provide its support for this through research and technical advice that could enhance the country's efforts in achieving food and nutrition security. Strategic Priority 2, which mirrors the PDP pillar of transforming production sectors to generate more quality jobs and competitive products, prioritizes cooperation areas that would improve the skills architecture, enable a smooth school-to-work transition, and bridge the skills gap in the labor force. The present state of our learning indicators needs to bode better for the ability of children to meet future demand for skilled workers and face the challenges of an increasingly complex world. For instance, according to the World Bank, learning poverty in the Philippines is 91%. This means 9 out of 10 children cannot read a simple text with comprehension by age 10, which is manifested in the country's low rankings in international student assessments. We find that the UN can provide its support for government-related programs by providing policy advice, technical assistance, and capacity building for multi-stakeholder partnerships, especially for the government's numerous learning, recovery, and enhancement programs that aim to improve the country's fundamentals in numeracy and literacy, which will ultimately translate into a dynamic and competitive workforce. Priority 3 prioritizes cooperation areas for mobilizing global and regional climate and biodiversity finance, as well as public and private investments, including green investments. This priority reflects the PDP pillar on enabling environment, particularly accelerating climate action and strengthening disaster resilience. Only 20% of the local government units or LGUs have climate and disaster risk-informed comprehensive development plans or CDPs. Additionally, many LGUs need more technical capacity to prepare bankable climate change project proposals. Again, the UN can contribute to the actions in these areas by leveraging international expertise, providing capacity building support, and mobilizing network for investments. Expanding its partnership, the UN can engage with more LGUs in local resiliency planning and investment programming. The UN SDCF will improve invaluable for close and steady collaboration between concerned agencies. In consultation with government agencies and relevant authorities, the UN will assist in building institutional capacities where needed and mobilizing integrated technical, financial, and programming instruments to accelerate and sustain SDG progress. The UN SDCF additionally provides structure to the point or to the joint management of the framework's desired outcomes, ensuring that we will progress and that proper control and monitoring will occur. To conclude, aligning the UN SDCF with our National Development Plan will be pivotal in scaling up our actions and ensuring that our national strategies are in conjunction with and contribute meaningfully to global development aspirations. As we stand at the halfway mark of the SDG timeline, now in 2023, the importance of leveraging the renewed UN-Philippine partnership has only become more pronounced, especially as we seek to sustain the progress made in addressing the sector severely affected by recent and current global crisis. Our end goal remains clear: to focus our concerted efforts on directing resources and plans toward lagging NDCs or SDGs, utilizing the UN SDCF to enhance our capacity for coherent and effective development practices. In this regard, I urge everyone here today to remain committed and proactive. This collective endeavor will be a strong or driving force in transforming the Philippines or the Philippines vision into a tangible reality. Thank you for your attention. I look forward to a fruitful and engaging event. Good day to all.
Thank you, Secretary Balasacan, for your informative and data-backed speech, including synergizing national development plans with future UN programming. For our next speaker, he has 30 years of international experience in humanitarian, peace-building, and development affairs in countries in transition across 5 different geographical regions. He has led large-scale operations in crisis and post-crisis settings and had direct participation in peace negotiations involving both state and non-state actors, and contributed to global best practices in the field of resource mobilization and partnership building. This includes his stints with various UN agencies, including FAO, UNDP, and IOM. To enlighten us on retooling the UN development system to achieve the SDGs, join me in welcoming to the podium UN Resident and Humanitarian Coordinator, Mr. Gustavo Gonzalez.
Secretary Enrique Manalo, Secretary Balisacan, Executive Director Teresa Mulita Lin, members of the development community and colleagues from the United Nations country team and other partners from the Philippine government. Well, first of all, thank you so much to DFA and NEDA for organizing this event. In fact, we are innovating by the fact that we are transforming a traditional celebration of UN Day, sometimes very protocolar, into a celebration of knowledge and partnership. So we are putting the bar quite hard, but I think it's important that we innovate on the way that we observe the UN Day. And let me just share with you a story. On the 24th of October, we signed the cooperation framework, and I was with my team preparing for the press release. And one of my colleagues used the term historic event. And of course, I'd say, well, why historic event? No, sometimes we have this arrogance that we are always, working in very special times, in exceptional circumstances. And then in this discussion, I learned of this, why we are talking and we are referring to this signing as historic. The first one, and it was already mentioned by both secretaries, is the fact that it's the first time that we sign a cooperation framework within the context of the UN reform and within the context of the reform of the development system. And I think that Secretary Manalo participated in this process. This UN development system reforms is one of the most radical reform of the UN. We must confess that all Secretary Generals, they bring some reform, but this reform is profound. And why? Because this reform is not just concerning UN agencies. It's also concerning member states. Because one of the, the reason of the dysfunctionalities of the UN is on the way that the UN is funded. And the UN is funded by member states. So they are part of the problem, and of course, they are part of the solution. So this UN reform has a particular importance and is bringing this new UN cooperation framework. The second reason is that is in fact the first time that after a long and very demanding consultation process, the UN and the government, they agreed on a single compact, on a single instrument from which all the UN agencies, the 24 UN agencies, they will derive their country programs. First time that we have this sort of derivation. So the likelihood of being consistent, of being integrated is very, very high. And we have a lot of expectations that we will operate and perform as one single team. Third reason why was historic event is the presence of the President of the Republic, Ferdinand Marcos Jr. And it goes beyond protocol. Why the President was there? Number one, because there is a long-standing partnership between the Philippines and the UN. I'm just coming from the retreat with the Secretary General. The Philippines is present in all mechanisms, forums, is so active, and is in some way delivering on the fact that it's one of the 51 founders of the UN. But the presence of the President is also a clear demonstration of the engagement of the Philippines, engagement with multilateralism. And it's happening in a moment where multilateralism is under stress, is under pressure, is even at risk. So this presence is also part of the historic dimension of this signing that took place on the 24th of October. Let me just enter into the subject. So historic event, historic signing, but what is new in this cooperation framework? I'm not going to refer to the priorities. I'm not going to mention, our work on low carbon economy, on human capital, on climate change, biodiversity. This is the what, and I think that, let's say, we're quite clear on that. Let me just share with you the how. We see four main transitions in this, thanks to this cooperation framework. Transitions that in some way, they are reshaping the way that we work with development partners, with civil society organizations, the private sector, academia, and of course, the government. So first, transition. Slide. This first transition is, so we are moving from a UN-centric traditional development aid to a national priority-based development support. And I think it's quite clear what we are saying. It was referred by Secretary Balisacan and Manalo, is that we are fully aligning the UN priorities to the priorities of the Philippine Development Plan and the Ambition Latin 2040 and the 8 priorities of the government. And it's a full alignment. And this is what required this demanding process of consultation and negotiation with the government. So the new cooperation framework is articulated based on these 3 outcomes and is mirroring the Philippine Development Plan. It doesn't mean that in the past the UN was not considering national priorities. What we are saying now is that it's fully anchored on the Philippine Development Plan, and we are even, as much as possible, working on the same indicators and targets. This is a fully alignment that will bring a lot of benefits. One of them is simplifying the transaction cost on reporting, on monitoring the implementation, but it's still more important, I think, that it's enhancing accountability and trust. If we are aligned, so we have high chances of working together because we share the same development path. And for member states, and many of them, they are present here, members of the development community, this cooperation framework will be a one-stop shop. If you would like to support the UN, please consider this instrument, this compact, and by contributing to that, immediately you will contribute to national priorities. Number 2, what interesting transition. Slide. So we are moving from a UN entity-based project assistant, agencies that are implementing their projects, to a UN system-wide support. And let me just explain, because perhaps it sounds a little bit, arrogant, even this term. And we will understand that. So we are transitioning from a fragmented, small-scale, and sometimes disconnected project of the UN to integrated programs and multi-partners platforms. And the reason is quite obvious. It was already mentioned by both secretaries. The nature of current challenges, the magnitudes of those challenges, they are exceeding the response capacity of any single actor. So this is something that goes beyond the capacity of any single agency. And we know that some of the challenges that we have, they go even beyond the capacity of any single country. So building alliances and coalition is an imperative. It's not anymore an option. And in this transition, I think that we started very strongly, because since the starting of the reform, we moved from 2 UN joint programs to now 16, and we still have 3 other UN joint programs in the pipeline. And resource partners, they are increasing this support to UN joint programs. But let's say this UN system-wide support is not just putting agencies working together. It's more than that. And this is what I would like to highlight. The UN, and you are members of the UN is the largest community of knowledge. The UN is the biggest normative governance system. And what we would like to make sure with this cooperation framework is that the Philippines benefit from this global normative work and from this global community of knowledge. And we have a number of examples that this process already started. The participation of the Philippines on the Food System Summit, supported by FAO, WFP, IFAD, UNIDO, UNOPS, the Transforming Education Summit that launched a process that will continue with the support of UNICEF, UNESCO, UNFPA, UN Women, the ongoing COP28, with the strong support from UNDP, UNEP, FAO, IOM, the Global Accelerator of Just Transition, Jobs and Social Protection, led by ILO, ITC, UN Habitat, the Enhancing Resilient Communities, for which the Philippines is one of the 4 countries in the world that will start merging humanitarian support, development support, in order to address natural disaster. And this system-wide support is also working with the country in making sure that we remain compliant with tens of treaties, conventions, and agreements, and we have a quite interesting experience already on the climate agenda, biodiversity, the human rights agenda, peace building, women empowerment, and gender equality. Let me just move on to the third transition, which is an important transition that will change the traditional UN business model. And it was already mentioned by Secretary Balisacan, what we call from funding to financing. As we know, funding is about transferring resources from a financial contributor to a recipient, but financing is a little bit more complex. It's about structuring the different financial flows to achieve a common result. And this is when the UN is expected to influence processes. Yesterday we had the first meeting as part of the UN country team with the IFIs. Asian Development Bank, the World Bank, IMF, they were together. And this is the new generation of the work of the UN. How we can support the government in accessing other sources of funding. How we can support the government in leveraging additional resources. How we can support the government in making a case, in modeling an initiative that will allow us to get access to different sources of funding. It's not just bringing money for the UN. To shift from funding to financing, harness, as I mentioned, this UN capacity to influence sources of public, private, domestic, and international finance. And we have so interesting experience on that. We have an increasing numbers of joint projects implemented, supported by the joint SDG, by the Peace Building Fund, an interesting experience already on the Greek Climate Fund. So, and by the way, based on the recent report of NEDA, the UN is ranking as the second provider of ODA. And when we say second provider of ODA, we are referring to many of the member states that are, supporting the UN and confirming the trust on the UN system. Finally, number 4. This is the transition from a traditional donor-recipient model to expanded and diversified partnership for transformation. Already mentioned by the previous speakers, so this new cooperation framework introduced a new type of modalities. One of them is the South-South and triangular cooperation. The new cooperation framework is even framed. We just adopted an internal policy on South-South and triangular cooperation that will help us in being more consistent in the promotion of this type of partnership that simply is enabling a dialogue, amongst countries from the Global South. The countries from the Global South, they are facing sometimes the same challenges. We are sure that we can bring common solutions. And it's encouraging that this South-South cooperation is already happening. For example, on forensic medicine between Argentina and the Philippines, on peace building between Colombia and the Philippines, in the case of BARM, and many others that we are not registering and are part of the bilateral relationship between the Philippines and the rest of the world. Trilateral cooperation is another very good example, and I would like to congratulate those UN agencies that are engaging in this type of partnership. Means that the government led on one priority, international financial institutions, they brings the credits, and the UN agency is supporting with, critical technical assistance. We have a fantastic example that is the new nutrition project that is supported by the World Bank. The Department of Health is leading this initiative, and UNICEF and UNOPS, they are filling some critical gaps of capacity. Another fantastic example with the Asian Development Bank is this project that is the flagship project of President Marcos Jr., the food stamps, for which WFP is bringing the global experience in this type of cash support for food security. The ADB is providing the resources, and of course, the Department of Social Welfare and Development leading this initiative. So, and of course, we have growing partnership with the private sector under the Enhancing Resilient Communities. The Philippines has the only humanitarian country team with the participation of the private sector, a large network of private companies that are engaging on what we call anticipatory action, prevention as part of a shock response to a natural disaster. And of course, to end, as part of the new partnership diversification approach, we will continue making the most of our long-standing cooperation with a large network of civil society organizations, including employers, associations, trade unions, academia, as part of a right-based and inclusive understanding of development. These are the beauties of the UN reform and the UN Charter in particular. As President Marcos Jr. says, with the UN delivering as one, fully cognizant of the Philippine needs and context and the voices of its partners, including civil society, our partnerships can be a catalyst for the accomplishment of our shared goals in the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Thank you so much. Congratulations again for this event. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Mr. Gonzalez, for sharing key transformations in the Philippine-UN partnership. Now, our final speaker for the main forum currently leads the ASEAN Center for Biodiversity in facilitating regional cooperation and coordination on biodiversity conservation for it to be sustainably managed and used and equitably shared for the well-being of people. Allow me to call on Dr. Teresa Mundita Lim, Executive Director of the ASEAN Center for Biodiversity, to discuss prospects for smarter partnerships for the conservation and sustainable use of biological diversity.
Thank you, Mark. Pardon my raspy voice. I had too much karaoke last night. Yeah, Secretary Manalo, Secretary Balisacan, Mr. Gustavo Gonzalez, UN Resident and Humanitarian Coordinator, representatives of the country representatives of the UN, friends from the DFA, government representatives who are here, other development partners, distinguished guests, good morning. To talk more about the partnership, I would like to speak about our experience in the ASEAN Center for Biodiversity. It is well recognized that the vast biodiversity of the ASEAN region greatly contributes to its identity. It occupies only 30% of the planet's surface, but it is home to 26% of all known plant and animal species. While climate change may lead to the loss of this natural wealth, healthy species diversity and ecosystems also enhances nature's ability to store and sequester carbon and to act as our natural defense against the effects of the changing climate. A well-balanced ecosystem regulates climate and also reduces the risk of pandemics. Hence, both biodiversity loss and climate change are closely intertwined and require equal attention and urgent actions. In response to the challenge of biodiversity loss, the ASEAN member states established the ASEAN Center for Biodiversity in 2005, the only ASEAN center that is hosted by the Philippines. The ACB has been a key partner of the United Nations, specifically the Convention on Biological Diversity, in facilitating capacity building, technical and scientific cooperation, and advancing awareness about biodiversity. The center also works closely with the CBD Secretariat in facilitating discussions on ecosystem-based adaptation and on mainstreaming biodiversity in various sectors and across society, as well as in the development of national action plans for achieving global targets for protected areas and other area-based conservation measures. It took hundreds of thousands of years for nature and ecosystems to evolve as we know them today. But we are now losing all these 1,000 times faster than they can naturally recover and replenish. Addressing the drivers of biodiversity loss requires strong partnerships with sectors that rely or are strongly dependent, whether directly or indirectly, on nature for sustainability and survival. It is therefore crucial to promote and build partnerships with various development sectors such as health, agriculture, fisheries, trade, tourism, and infrastructure, among others. A smart and effective partnership for biodiversity entails a whole of society approach. This includes all stakeholders from the government, indigenous peoples, local communities, private sector, and other stakeholders. The Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, which was recently adopted in December of 2022 under the UNCBD, provides a blueprint from where transformative change can be achieved through collaborative action and partnerships. Smart partnerships cover capacity building opportunities, scientific and technical collaborations, technology transfer, knowledge sharing, and awareness raising across a wide range of stakeholders. It entails a deep understanding that investing in nature is vital and contributes to the sustainability of business operations and outcomes. Additionally, partnerships should be mutually beneficial, with complementary contributions that optimize available resources to achieve a common goal. For ACB, our partnerships are always consistent with our mandate, mission, and vision, taking into account the needs and priorities of the ASEAN member states and the ASEAN region, as well as the post-2025 ASEAN vision and the objectives of the Convention on Biological Diversity. The ACB has long-standing partnerships with ASEAN's dialogue and development partners such as Germany, Japan, Norway, and the European Union, which have been generating best practices. These partnerships have been generating best practices and worthwhile achievements that future collaborations can already build on. The ACB also partners with institutions and organizations such as the Global Wildlife Conservation and the Pew Charitable Trusts, as well as with the private sector, including the Metro Pacific Investments Corporation and the Google Arts and Culture, to name a few. Effectively communicating the gains of these successful partnerships and cooperation increases its potential to be replicated and sustained. A smart partnership results in sustainable joint initiatives with greater and lasting impacts. The ACB provides a platform of knowledge and experience sharing on biodiversity conservation and sustainable use within and beyond the region. As the ACB continues its efforts to contribute to the attainment of the UN goals for sustainable development through our work on biodiversity conservation and mainstreaming, we have been recognized as a reliable partner in implementing biodiversity-related programs in the ASEAN. In addition, the ACB advances its cooperation with the private sector as the current chair of the Global Partnership for Business and Biodiversity, including promoting shared values and effective guardrails. In September of 2023, the ACB and the ASEAN Business Advisory Council partnered to establish the ASEAN Business and Biodiversity Initiative, a regional platform that will advance climate action agenda in ASEAN. The ABBI will actively contribute towards transitioning to a greener and sustainable future for ASEAN by encouraging businesses in the region to adopt nature-based solutions to climate change and establish a regional carbon market. Moving forward, we hope to capitalize on the momentum and the collaborations that are becoming available for the collective implementation of the KMGBF, as well as to present opportunities to synergize efforts under the Convention on Biological Diversity, the UN Framework Convention of Climate Change, and other multilateral environmental agreements. One upcoming partnership that is in alignment with the KMGBF is the ASEAN NMAPS, or the Effectively Managing Network of Marine Protected Areas in Large Marine Ecosystems in the ASEAN Region project that the Center will be implementing with the UNDP. Likewise, the Center looks forward to implementing its partnership with the Amazon Cooperation Treaty Organization and promote South-South cooperation in conserving biodiversity between the ASEAN and the ACTO, or the Amazon Cooperation Treaty Organization. In addition, the ACB will continue to strengthen its engagement with the academia and research institutions to provide scientific and evidence-based information to aid policy and program development. Towards this end, the ACB and the Manila Observatory recently signed a partnership agreement to generate scientific data that will support decision-making on adopting nature-based solutions to climate change. The recent study we conducted, together with Pew Charitable Trust, on interconnectivity of marine ecosystems in the ASEAN region and adjacent areas, has given the impetus for the ACB to support work on establishing and recognizing transboundary ASEAN heritage parks. Lastly, we prioritize the effective implementation of our communication strategy to further expand our network of conservation partners. With all of this in the pipeline, we are confident that the ACB will complement work on the UNSDCF, as the ACB stands fully committed to working with its host country, the Philippines, as well as its Southeast Asian neighbors, to leverage their diverse natural wealth and thus collectively propel the entire region towards a more resilient and strong community where no one is left behind. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lim. At this point, Excellencies, we invite you to a photo opportunity. You will be assisted by our staff. And after that photo by Mr. Gonzalez, you may head to the front of the stage for a photo opportunity. For this second photo, may we also kindly ask our staff to assist our speakers in heading down the stage for a photo with the rest of the guests. They will be standing in front of the television. They'll be seated. So for everyone in your seats, may we ask you to prepare your best smile for a group photo. Hi everyone, may we request you to please stand so you will be seen for the photos. And if we could also request everyone to please compress a little bit so we could all fit. Especially for those on the side. There we go, perfect. Awesome. So, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we will have a quick coffee break. And given the importance of our upcoming forum, may we kindly request everyone to be back in their seats in 5 minutes. Thank you. 5 minutes. Sure, go ahead. Ladies and gentlemen, I know we are all enjoying our coffee break, but may we kindly request everyone to find their way back to the seats. We will begin the first sub-forum shortly. Thank you. Once again, may we kindly call on all the participants and all of our guests to please find their way back to the seats so we will begin the next sub-forum. Thank you.
Hello.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I do hope that you have your coffee already with you in your seats. And we are now going to open the first sub-forum on sustainable solutions and local actions in the context of Philippine development cooperation. And I'm going to hand over the floor now to our moderator, Deputy Assistant Secretary, and Mr. Jesus Enrique Garcia II.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mark. Thank you. Can you hear me properly, everybody? I hope you enjoyed your coffee break. We had a very substantive main forum with distinguished speakers, Secretary Manalo, Secretary Balisacan, UN Resident Coordinator Gonzalez, Executive Director Lim. Now we move to, let's say, our main discussions, our forum proper. And it's my honor to be the moderator for this first session on sustainable solutions and local actions in the context of Philippine development cooperation. We have assembled this morning a really star-studded panel. If this were a movie, for sure it'd be nominated for Best Picture. This morning with eminent officials, experts, and advocates who will share their insights and experiences with us regarding development cooperation on the ground. Allow me to introduce our distinguished panelists very briefly. First and foremost, we have with us Dr. Leonor Briones, Director of the Southeast Asian Ministers for Education, Regional Center for Education, Innovation and Technology, or CIMEO Inotech. As former Secretary of Education, an accomplished educator and advocate, she brings a wealth of knowledge and experience. Thank you so much, ma'am, for being with us this morning. We also have with us the Honorable Cielo Crisel Lagman Luistro, Mayor of Tabaco City, the first elected woman mayor of Tabaco City. She was previously Congresswoman of the 1st District of Albay, and she's currently focal mayor for the SDGs and member of the National Executive Board of the League of Cities of the Philippines. Thank you very much, ma'am. Pleasure to see you again. Thank you. We also have with us Attorney Engelbert Cardonas Jr., President and CEO of the Development Academy of the Philippines. He also served previously as mayor of Tuguegarao City and was a professor of law. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us. Also is Dr. Lionel Henri Dabadi, a country representative of the Food and Agriculture Organization Philippines. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us. You have a wealth of experience serving in the UAE, Rome, and also it's your second time around here in the Philippines, being our resident aquaculture international expert. Thank you very much for being with us. Merci beaucoup. And lastly, but not least, is Ms. Maris Cardenas, Executive Director of the Center for Empowerment, Innovation, and on Renewable Energy, a Philippine nonprofit, multi-stakeholder research and advocacy association representing civil society in our panel here today. Thank you very much, ma'am, for being with us. So since we're a bit behind schedule, we'd like to immediately begin with the panel. And we'd like to invite Dr. Briones first to deliver her remarks. I'd like to remind our speakers to please limit your first interventions to 5 minutes. And then so we could have we have enough time for an open forum. Ma'am, please, you have the floor. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. As an institution located in the Philippines, supporting UN programs, of course, we totally agree with the new or renewable or whatever it is, the new ways of doing things in the UN and in the global community. I also totally agree that this is a historic event, but history does not develop out of nothing. And as early as the 1950s, the Philippines has already been very active in not just accepting advice, getting data, listening to speeches, but also providing resources. Through the International Commitments Fund, the Philippine government has been supporting 3 major research, teaching, and knowledge-sharing agencies in the Philippines at its own expense. And also, the glimmerings, the start of the new framework can be seen not just in the activities of the United Nations, but also in the Philippine government itself, which has fully supported all the programs and at the same time even contributed whatever meager, whatever little resources are available. At present, the CIMEO Inotech has a very strong advocacy because we have been weeping, gnashing our teeth over learning losses. But perhaps it is time to examine even more closely the learning gains which have emerged, particularly in the field of education. We do not wait for data to come out officially or analysis to come out of press. But we have to act whenever there is something needed to be done. And so there have been many creative solutions to the learning losses, which probably need to be inventoried and to be shared with the other countries. We cannot wait for a child who hides in a refrigerator to cross a river and ask for data on whatever is happening in the rest of the world. So this is one thing I would like to emphasize. The second advocacy, which Simeo Inotech is advocating, is that even as we talk about being behind in technology, even as we talk, as I said, about learning losses, we have to look at, I said, as the learning gains. Also, a major advocacy is we cannot separate technology and the humanities. We cannot just concentrate on finding new solutions, impressive solutions to supposed problems without looking at ourselves as humans responsible for learners, for communities, and for our respective countries. And this is where the direction of Simeo Inotech is. And we have set up a gallery, an art gallery, for students to see that when they create new things, new innovations, they also have to create beauty. They have also to create usefulness, and they also have to inspire instead of engaging in other activities. One of the major programs which I am very proud of as the oldest executive perhaps in the Philippine government is our youth program. We have initiated extensive youth programs because we are aware that the battle for development, the battle for better societies, the battle for life is not just about technology. And we cannot separate both. So we have put up an art gallery, we have put up classes for children so that even in their push towards greater efficiency, better ways of doing things, they also create things which make us better human beings. And finally, and this has been mentioned by the earlier speakers, I think it's very, very important. One initiative, it's not really an initiative because everybody does it, is we go to the private sector also. We cooperate very closely with the private sector because they have made very impressive innovations in making education much more available to our learners. So in short, as we support the new framework agreement, we also say that we have begun it more than 50 years ago in the Philippine government. We have always cooperated with the programs of the United Nations, and at the same time, we have gone beyond them, gone beyond the learning losses, gone beyond the advances in technology into perhaps creating a better world for our learners and for our children. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, ma'am, for those very moving remarks, how you shared Simeo's experience, and also that the Philippines is a significant contributor to South-South cooperation through your center and other centers here. For our next speaker, I'd like to give the floor to Attorney Engelbert Caronan, President and CEO of the Development Academy of the Philippines. Sir.
Okay. This morning, I'm going to share our experiences in capacitating public institutions and other development actors to meet the SDGs. On October 24, 2023, the United Nations and the Philippine government solidified their commitment to progress by formally endorsing the UN Sustainable Development Cooperation Framework, a joint strategic planning framework for collaboration spanning 2024 to 2028. The Development Academy of the Philippines embraces this new framework, recognizing its pivotal role in propelling the nation towards the targets of the 2030 Agenda. And now with the release of the updated Philippine Development Plan 2023 to 2028, the Academy, as a knowledge institution and a think tank for governance and innovation, will significantly benefit from this framework by providing the strategic guidance and direction for our capacity building and program research initiatives. In realizing the SDGs, we believe that it is imperative for our program at the Academy to adopt strategic and cross-cutting approaches to achieve maximum impact. Allow me therefore to present our prime strategies for capacitating public institutions and development actors to achieve the respective SDG targets. First, we developed strategic tools and standards that use the SDGs as the normative target, providing directionality for institutions and development actors. And second, we developed pragmatic and effective processes that incorporate the fundamental principles of the SDGs, including multisectorality, collaborative, participatory, and sustainable in its design, with the intent to institutionalize these processes to public institutions and other development actors. Consistent with the view that every country needs to determine for itself how best to approach the preparation and implementation of its national sustainable development strategy, we develop a platform that mainstreams the sharing and reuse of data that will serve as a key enabler for institutions and development actors to implement their SDG 2030 agenda. This platform, which we call the Data Observatory Philippines, will improve the current government data value cycle by, number one, enabling greater data access, and number two, reflecting the standards, interoperability, and semantics of collecting, exploring, and computing with data in its architecture. According to the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, the value of data increases by 10 to 20 times when shared with primary data users, and by another 20 to 50 times when shared with secondary users. The creation of this platform aligns with the consolidated strategy of the Fourth Industrial Revolution for the ASEAN in creating reliable and secure data infrastructure to improve spectrum availability, and I would like to emphasize knowledge sharing in this region. More importantly, the observatory was designed with SDG 2030 agenda in mind, directly contributing to 3 SDGs, namely SDG 9, since the observatory is a data infrastructure designed to foster innovation, SDG 16, since its long-term goal is to mainstream to transform the Philippines into a data-driven and a data-agile institution, and SDG 17, since the observatory will follow its cooperative framework in driving synergistic actions and effective institutional partnership across the bureaucracy. Ultimately, the information and public value generated by the observatory will have an effect on all other SDGs as it provides a reference point in creating smart and targeted solutions to the specific needs of all users, achieving one SDG after another. Another flagship initiative under strategic tools and standards is our Smart City Hexagon tool, contributing to SDG 11 on sustainable cities and communities, SDG 16 on peaceful and inclusive societies, and SDG 17 on partnership for goals. It is a web-based assessment tool designed to measure the progress of cities and municipalities as they become smart and sustainable cities. This tool is benchmarked on international standards, namely ISO 37120-2019 for indicators for smart city services and quality of life, ISO 37122-2020 indicators for smart cities, and ISO 37123-2020 indicators for resilient cities. Using the Hexagon tool, the local government units are assessed according to 6 domains, namely smart living, smart people, smart environment, smart mobility, smart economy, and smart governance. Each domain is divided into themes. And each theme corresponds to sub-indicators, and each indicator corresponds to an SDG. This way, local government units can keep track and monitor their SDG targets as well as their level of compliance with the required ISO indicators. Once again, this tool makes use of SDGs as a normative target and as a directional processes. And one of our critical initiative is the implementation of the LIPAD-PH program. LIPAD-PH program is a 6-stage program spanning 8 months to kickstart the smart city transformation of a local government unit by setting forth its local development agenda, anchored on smart city indicators, and again, of the SDGs. The LIPAD-PH process embodies the fundamental principles of SDGs, namely that it is solutions-oriented, that it is multisectoral, that encourages innovation, and that it ought to be participatory. Ultimately, the goal of the LIPAD program is to empower each and every LGU, transforming our cities into smart and creative communities, and institutionalizing innovation framework that embody these SDG principles. The DICT, DILG, DOST, and DAP entered into a memorandum of understanding to roll out this program of smart communities with its concomitant SDG norms to 80 cities over the next 5 years. To conclude, what we have presented is our growing portfolio of capacity building measures to mainstream SDGs to our stakeholders, guided by the new UN Sustainable Development Cooperation Framework. We will be informed of the necessary adjustments needed to align to the new priorities of our government. Our hope is that we can all build upon our experiences as we continue to operationalize the framework and energize the creation of a shared value for SDGs within the public sector. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Attorney Karnan, for that very informative presentation. You talked about the tools that the Development Academy of the Philippines has that really connects what we're doing at the global level with the local level. So I think this is a very good segue to our next speaker, the Honorable Cielo Crisel Lagman Luistro, Mayor of Tabaco City, who will talk about local action and SDGs. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The first time I heard about the MDGs, I was a student of Professor Briones at the University of the Philippines. That was way back in 2006. And I knew right there and then that if I became the mayor the following year, I would use the MDGs as my template for development. Why reinvent a new template if you have this internationally accepted goals, targets, and indicators? So when I started my term in 2007 as the first woman city mayor of Tabaco City, if you don't know where Tabaco City is, do you know the Mayon volcano? The Mayon volcano is still active up to now. That's where my city is. I checked the local data that was available. And the data that was available for us was way back 5 years ago. Because every 5 years, now it's the PSA, but before it was the NSO, does the census every 5 years. So I didn't have new data. I had old data, and it was not disaggregated data. And then Professor Briones called me, and she said, would you be interested to attend a national conference on the CBMS, or the Community-Based Monitoring System? And I said, what is that about? I think that would help you, because she was with Social Watch Philippines, right? This would help you now monitor the implementation of the MDGs. And I said, okay, for as long as I don't get to pay. So it was Social Watch Philippines who paid for my attending the conference. And I was so amazed because the indicators of the MDGs were exactly the questions in the CBMS. So it's quite lengthy, but the great thing about it is that we don't need to wait for NSO. We have our own enumerators in the community. They capacitated us. We can get our data immediately, and then we validate the data ourselves. So we own the data. And so Social Watch said that we can partner. Remember, and we put up only 2 million pesos to conduct a census of all the households in Tabaco City. We have done this since 2008 until the present, every 2 years. So it was easy for us to transition from the MDGs to the SDGs because the indicators are the same. And now we can monitor our progress. Now, the problem really is when the CBMS is now transferred to the PSA. It's very good, but it's a good problem because not all the LGUs have enrolled in the CBMS because it is quite expensive. And as I was listening earlier, thinking, how can UN agencies assist local governments? Most probably, the PSA is too slow, really, because of the lack of funding. Most probably, financing the CBMS, which is now a law, would be a very good start. And now CBMS Network, under Dr. Celia Reyes, has partnered with ADB. I know ADB is here to develop a monitoring tool, a dashboard that would actually monitor the attainment and localization of the SDGs. So that would happen mid next year, and Tabaco City volunteered to be part of the pilot city. It's not just the Philippines, but I think there will be other Asia Pacific countries that will be participating in this. The subnational report, which is voluntary, is only participated by 20% of the cities. And the results that came out was not really reflective of what the cities are doing. If you just look at our budget, the budget of the city, we have a 20% for development, and that's all sustainable development goals. We have 5% gender and development fund, and that is all gender. And we have 1% of our tax collected for local, for real property taxes that goes to education. So if you look at the budget of LGUs, it's all tagged to finance the SDGs. But is that being reported? I don't think so. So there's a gap. And I think the gap is, how do we report? Because we have not reported. So how do they get data from us that can be consolidated? There should be a uniform method of collecting data, analyzing, and submitting it, or else it will be, So that's among the gaps that I think I would like to share with all of us this morning. But there is much that has been done. For instance, I will just, I think it is worth mentioning that some of the cities have partnered with UN agencies. Like, for instance, the cities of Panabo and Vigan can track their city's progress in specific SDGs through the local and urban governance dashboard. But not all cities are involved in this. And then there's another, the development of local indicators and vulnerability exposure database, or the DevLive, which is also funded, I think, by the UNDP. So I think there just should be one tool so that everyone would be able to submit, our reports to that platform. To that platform. I'm very excited to share this, knowing fully well that I'm the only local chief executive in this room. And yes, we think global, but we act local. So all the data that we submit are data coming from us. So you really have to make this extra sexy for the barangays and for the municipalities and cities so that they will participate. And this is what I did when I first became mayor. MDGs, who would understand Millennium Development Goals? But I said in our vernacular, in our language, Bicol, mga dapat gibuhon. Things that you have to do. Of course, you have to keep your children in school and educate them. Of course, there should be no woman who should die of pregnancy. While giving life, you die. Everyone should have a decent shelter. Everyone should be able to have clean water. These are the things that we want, every one of us want. So I think you really have to bring the Sustainable Development Goals, 17 of them, down to the level of the people so that they can be part in achieving these goals, not just national governments, but individual households. This can be done. I'm just proud to tell you, ma'am, that I'm a good student, okay? And I learned much from you. And I create, and we have many partnerships. This one partnership that I'd like to share with you is with USAID. And we have this program, ABC Plus. When we started, they developed modules and learning sessions that can be seen on TV for our kids. And then I augmented it by financing 106 reading tutors fielded to 14 schools. Because at the beginning of the school year, the non-readers in Tabaco City was 39%. But after the interventions of ABC Plus our intervention, at the end of the school year, it went down to 3.9%. Measurable. Amazing. It can be done if everyone is on board. Just mabalos po.
Thank you. Thank you so much, ma'am. And I'm so happy that our event today brought the two of you back together for a reunion. But you really reminded us of the need to connect the global with the local. And you shared the wonderful work that your city, under your leadership, has been doing. And I think we also, right on stage, we have probably an emerging partnership with the tools of the Development Academy of the Philippines that they presented on how cities can become smarter by measuring. And what you mentioned, that the data is there, but they just need to be tapped. And now I think, and then through the UNSDCF and the partnership with our UN friends, perhaps we're actually here at the beginning of a very, very innovative and comprehensive tool that can measure the SDGs on the ground. So let's keep this in mind as we continue our conversation. I'd like now to give the floor to Ms. Maris Cardenas, Executive Director of Center for Empowerment, Innovation, and Training on Renewable Energy. Thank you.
Hello, good morning. Magandang umaga sa lahat. And I'm also very happy actually to see Ma'am Liling Briones, because when I started my engagement with civil society, I started with Freedom from Debt Coalition. She was a mother, a mentor, and an inspiration to all of us. And I also told Mayor Lagman when she first entered the Congress, we also engaged with her. That was on the issue of energy. So my engagements with both of them were related to energy. And that's also when I started with FDC during the Bataan Nuclear Power Plant. And then, there are alternatives. And until now, we're saying there is an alternative. So this is what we're doing now. Before I go on, I would like to share about the center, my organization. And this also would answer or would present my point that I would like to stress on maybe where we need to focus more in our work in these coming days, in these coming years, as we near 2030, and that's our goal. So how can we really achieve the 17 goals? So I need to wear my glasses. That was 27 years ago when I first Ma'am Liling. So I need my glasses now. So formed in 2018, the Center for Empowerment, Innovation, and Training on Renewable Energy, or CENTRE, has worked as a network. It is a not-for-profit association that brings together renewable energy advocates, developers, researchers, and social impact as investors as well, pursuing full deployment of renewable energy in the country to address energy poverty, high electricity rates, and climate change in a just, sustainable, and democratic manner. It is a hub as well, with diverse expertise of members, NGOs, the Think Do centers, as they're called now, the people's organizations, private industry players, electric cooperatives, labor groups, and academic centers as well, and some individuals. The center is envisaged as a hub for knowledge, social innovation, policy studies, advocacy, and community empowerment towards achieving 100% RE. The name center itself represents 100% RE, so that's our vision. Our work puts bias or has bias on the disadvantaged or marginalized groups. Thus, we endeavor to find ways how these groups can have electricity through renewable energy, to improve their economic and social condition and contribute in the attainment of peace in their communities, and how national and local policies can ensure this. I won't dwell so much on the work of our organization, but I would like to give meaning to UNSDCF. So as I was, it was difficult for me to get a ride this morning, so I had to take a motorcycle from Quezon City coming here at my age and in a dress. Okay, so and while on the road, I was able to think of what can UNSDCF mean. So UN, and this also what I want to stress. So we most of our work also do or focus on. So people-centered democratization. And in UNSDCF, I think we can find also some meaning to this. U can mean unbundling. So unbundling when the energy sector, through the EPIRA, Electric Power Industry Reform Act, was passed, the thought of that was to demonopolize, to have more players, to encourage the private sector, more private sector. But later, I would also like to share that when we speak of private sector, this is not just businesses, but we must also look into the communities. They are also considered in general as part of private sector. And in renewable energy, we can see that the goal of unbundling, to demonopolize, to have more players, can also be realized because there can be more players in renewable energy. And then N, net metering in the energy sector now. So net metering is a mechanism, and it's a non-fiscal mechanism that can encourage more players also. This gives incentives to more players or to even consumers to also become producers. So this is also a way of broadening the participation of people and realizing the acceleration of renewable energy. And S is solar rooftop. And in solar rooftop, this is a technology that can be installed or can be used by many people because this is not site-specific, unlike hydro and other technologies. And then D, democratization again. So all these are needed, or these are just examples or ways how we can further democratize the energy and the industry. But this is not just energy industry that we're talking about, because we all know and we recognize the importance of energy in our daily lives, in the economic and social development, but also in the attainment of peace and security. And then C is very essential because collaboration is needed. We have heard our speakers talk about partnership, collaboration, and in realizing broader participation or broader deployment of renewable energy, we need the participation or working together of the different sectors of multi-stakeholders. So collaboration is needed. And that was also the reason why we continue, the center has continued to do its work or conduct projects despite the limited funds because of collaboration. And then financing, so funds would be essential. There are ways of financing, and we hope that our financial institutions would not just look at the big players, the big businesses, but also find ways how we can support the small players, the community level actors. And I'm happy that some UN agencies are also already into this direction, and especially how to support women, because women are many of our entrepreneurs are women. While they are homemakers, they are doing multitasks, and so they can do home-based work. They can be they can contribute in the income of their households. But what we also need to realize that women can also be active players in the energy industry. They can be solar installers. They can also be installers or producers of pico hydro. You probably have heard about the solar grandmas, the ITAs. And we in Center are also thinking of having the Aqua Bidas. Bida means a star. Or Aqua Divas. That means the aqua for Pico Hydro. Because we've talked to women in Laguna, and they are rich in water resources. They have rivers flowing at the backyard or within their backyard, but they could not harness the potential of that because of lack of technology, lack of knowledge. But they want to, they know at least that they can use that to and be transform that into renewable energy so that they can reduce their electricity bill, and that could also help them go into other income activities, income generating activities to augment or to contribute to the income of the family. So that's UNSDCF. I hope that you will remember. And in realizing this, again, another acronym. So I won't take long now. So the last acronym. This is 5 C's. So we need, so the 5 C's would be consultation is needed. We always do consultations. All, I think, institutions, the government, the multilateral agencies are doing consultation. But what kind of consultation are we doing? So the civil society, or in many forums, we have always stressed that we need to endeavor to make these consultations really meaningful. And to make these consultations meaningful, the participants need to be given ample time to review the materials, to understand it, so they can have informed engagement or informed interventions. So the information must also be available. Many times we have encountered the difficulty of accessing information from different institutions. So it would be helpful if we can have this information available so that when consultations are being called, we are able to give more substantive interventions. And then, so consultation, capacity building, already mentioned, collaboration, and convergence. So convergence, we need to provide also spaces for the different sectors to bring together or to bring forward the different ideas. And from this coming together of the different sectors, we can also find ways how we can work together. So I just came actually from the Renewable Energy Congress that our organization has been holding since 2018. So it's an annual event, and that's a venue or a platform where we can bring together the businesses, the academe, the youth, the workers, the local government units to understand together what are the developments in the policies, what are the new practices or technologies, emerging technologies, and then it's a venue also for physical connection with the people, and that's where we can also start the collaboration. So there have been many discussions on or conferences on energy, but these are not actually accessible to many parts or people in the other parts of the country. So that's why we try to bring these kinds of discussion in different places. So in Quezon City, in Cebu, in Davao, this kind of exercise or activity is quite costly. So we need the partnership. We need to partner with the different groups in order to be able to do this. And then lastly is change. So when we do this, we can finally see the change. But the change that we need is the change that people also want. So we go again to the first, the consultation, and the next, and the next. So that would be all for now. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ma'am Cardenas, for what you shared about the need to involve all stakeholders, especially vulnerable groups, in renewable energy, and UNSDCF, and the 5 Cs, especially change and consultation. I'd just like to remind everybody that we'll have to have a hard stop at 11:30. Unfortunately, there's so much to talk about, and we have very rich discussion. So I'll give the floor to our next speaker, Dr. Leonel Dabadi, country representative of the FAO, and then after that, just we'll have maybe 1, 2, or 3 questions quickly, and then we'll need to conclude our first forum today. Mr. Dabadi.
Thank you very much. Let's speak about something that is very close to my heart. You can understand it's food. I like good food. And you kindly mentioned at the beginning of the introduction that it's my second time to the Philippines. The real reason is because of all the good food you have here in the country. So before I start, I was very, very inspired by all the presentations and all the connection I can see with the work we are doing in FAO. And I think that's just as an initial remark. I think that the purpose of this UNSDCF is really to create intersectoral connection, and I think that was very, very, very important. All your mentions about development, about LGUs, about educations, about energy, really that's at the core of what we are doing in FAO, and I think that the UNSDCF will be allowing to develop this kind of connections. So before I start, as you can see on the slide, it's about agri-food systems. I would like to without being too technical, explain a little bit this concept, because for many people it's a new fancy word for naming agriculture and food, but it's not. Actually, it's a real revolution. It's already a very different way of working, which is related to the fact that we understand that if we continue the way we produce food, we will not be able to feed the world. We are already 8 billion. We are going to be 9, 10 billion in the fastest way we have ever seen in human history. And if we want to feed the people, we will need to change the way we work. This initially this concept of agri-food system was started in 2019 when there was a group of very eminent scientists, probably the most eminent scientists of our time. They gathered and they asked the question, can we feed 10 billion people with healthy feeds and without destroying the environment? And the answer was no if we continue the way we do it, but yes if we transform the way we produce our foods. So this was in 2019, and in fact, many times the research remains in the books and in the publications, but in 2021, FAO launched this UN Food Systems Summit, and the purpose of this UN Food Systems Summit was first to gather all the available knowledge that we had, and also to propose a way forward with all the member countries. And all the member states of the UN have agreed on implementing this transformation of agri-food systems. So whenever we drink a coffee, or we drink a tea, or we eat a balut, we are creating a lot of interactions. Some are positive. We are giving money for farmers. We are giving money for all the people along the value chains. But some are negative also. And most of the time, in the way we have been approaching the food systems so far, we have not been considering all those dimensions. Yet they are very important. FAO has released a report 2 weeks ago, which highlight that for the Philippines, for example, all what they call the hidden costs, so all the costs of those negative interactions that we don't want to see, amounts to 9% of the total GDP. 9% of the GDP of the Philippines. Philippines is not performing worse. In fact, Philippines is performing very well in relations to other countries. It is performing like a middle-income country and developed countries. But 9%, this is huge. And definitely, we want to implement ways to change this, because we will not be able to feed the world, but also to feed the populations in the Philippines. Philippine population has increased by 20% in the last 10 years. So we will really need to change this. So what is the UN doing for fostering partnerships for sustainable agri-food systems and localizing sustainable agriculture practices? First, at the global stage, because it's really important, as was mentioned and highlighted this morning by Secretary Manalo, Philippines becoming an economic important country has ambitions, and it is normal to have ambitions in terms of diplomacy and highlighting all the informations that all the knowledge that is produced in the Philippines. Philippines has a lot to teach to the rest of the world, particularly when it comes to climate change, etc. So what we are doing, we are working in connection with the government, the DA, of course, who is our line ministry, but also the DFA. I keep on disturbing Director Morales all the time, and she's always very supportive in the way she's working, because we want to really make sure that the Philippines is contributing to the international debate. So there was the 2021 Food System Summits. This last July, there was the 2023 FSS plus 2 stock taking moment, and tomorrow in Bangkok there is also a workshop where the people are going to be receiving the latest information on how we can transform the agri-food systems. Here I'm talking, of course, at a very theoretical way, because it's all the negotiations, the international negotiations. But more practically, what are we doing in the Philippines? So it's the same. In the Philippines, we are building coalitions. We are building coalitions first with the government, the national government, but also the local governments. With our other UN agencies, thanks to this UN SDCF, we have here several heads of our main partners, the other Rome-based agency, the World Food Programme, UNICEF, IOM, UNDP, and I probably forget UNIDO, I probably forget others, UN Habitat. And we are working together to really build coalitions. And we are also working with the private sector. We are working with the different stakeholders, but particularly the farmers. The farmers and the fishers, they are on the front line of these transformations. They are the one who will be succeeding or will be failing. And we don't want them to fail, we want them to succeed. And to succeed, we need first to give them an enabling environment. So how do we do enabling environment? We provide them with the skills, with capacity building, with regards to entrepreneurship. We don't want to just give technology or give fertilizers, because it will not serve. We don't want to create people who are assisted all the time. We want to create people who are entrepreneurs and they can decide for themselves. But for this, we need to train them on how assessing their environment, and how by assessing their environment, they can implement a transformation, the sustainable transformation that we do. So for example, we have been working with cacao farmers, with rice farmers. We have been building with goat, fish, and many other sectors on building entrepreneurships and giving them the tools, the knowledge to be able to implement sustainable transformation. The second level that we are doing is also to work with the communities on integrated approaches. For example, we have a very nice project with the Department of Natural Resources, whereby we have created a coalition, a community coalition that includes the LGUs, the provincial governments, of course the stakeholders, the farmers, the barangay captains, etc., to put in place watershed restoration. And by doing this, we do not just protect the environment, but we rehabilitate the whole ecosystem services. You were mentioning about water. By rehabilitating the watershed, we contribute to improve the water productions. By rehabilitating the watershed, we can also include a healthy diets, because we produce healthy vegetables in the fire breaks to protect the forest. So that's the kind of things we are doing. But I would say that generally speaking, we don't want to come with solutions. The solutions have to be taken by the people. So what we need to do is work with the people, give them the capacity to find the solutions and transform their own systems. And so coming back to the second point of the intervention that was requested to mention, localizing sustainable agricultural practices. I think this is essential. The Philippines is an archipelago of more than 7,600 islands. They are not all inhabited, but maybe more than 2,000 are habited. And I would say the Philippines is an archipelago of thousands of agri-food systems, because the situation is different. It's not the same whether you are in the upper land of Luzon or if you are in the lowland of Mindanao. It's not the same if you are in a big island in Mindoro or if you are in a small island. you don't have the same conditions. So there is no one-size-fits-all solutions. We need to be specific, and we need to engage with the people. And that's what we are doing on localizing sustainable agricultural practices. So how can we upscale this? First of all, I think the upscaling is not so much the role of FAO, it's the role of the government. We are the UN, we are here to support, we are here to help, we are here to raise awareness, we are here to advocate, but upscaling is something that has been to be decided by the government. And from my point of view, for example, I feel very happy when I see the government adhering to what we do. And particularly, very recently, I was in Misamis Oriental, and we had in the Halubihid municipality, LGU, and also the provincial governors. They have committed their own resources to continue and to work with us on what we have been doing. And this is something very excellent. More generally speaking, I think that we cannot, as I said, we cannot come with one-size-fits-all solutions, and we cannot come with solutions that are too simple given the complexity of the systems, of the agri-food systems. But definitely, education, you mentioned about the important. Education is just imperative. It's not sufficient. Education is not sufficient, but education is imperative. We need to have, this is the root grass of any upscaling of the sustainable agricultural practices. And then, of course, we have a capacity building, we have technical expertise, we have different areas. I think we need also to really focus on the people. Very recently, we know there is a new Secretary for Agriculture, His Excellency Thio Laurel. The President also has made a lot of big statements, and I think this is the right directions. We're talking about production is really the right directions. For me, it is incredible that a country like the Philippines, which is endowed with so much natural resource, so much conditions to produce food, cannot produce more for its population, for its growing populations. Of course, there is climate change. Of course, we have to work on this, and we work on this. That's part of the package that we give to the communities. You know, how to build anticipatory actions and all these kind of approaches. But definitely, that's the kind of approach we need to do. We also need to make use of the new technologies. Digital technologies, for example. Digital technologies, we are already working with DSWD on providing a database of the community-based organizations. For example, if you are an LGU and you look for some procurement for food or for school feeding, etc., then you can go with this database and you will get access of where are the contact of the municipalities and what kind of food you can do. That's what we are doing, but I think we can go much more beyond. And particularly for the farmers, they will benefit a lot in their relations with the traders, in their access to market, because we know that in the Philippines, accessing market is really challenging. We can do a lot about this. So I'm afraid I may be I don't want to be too long in the presentation, but just to say that this UNDCF is really going to unleash, I believe, our capacity to work collectively, to make us smarter. I'm adding another smarter to your presentation, to make a smart mobilization of the resource for maximum efficiency and maximum impact for the people. And as agriculture, I will really want to put in front of our concerns the farmers and the fishers. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Dabadi. In the interest of time, unfortunately, we will be skipping the open forum for this forum, and we will be moving on to the next sub-forum. So please give a round of applause for that interesting discussion given by our panelists today. We'll have a quick 2-minute break, and then we immediately start off with the next forum. Thank you.
Mom, can I bill you? Can I bill you to the front?
Apologies for not having enough time for the opening forum. So we'll have one photo.
Yes.
And we will have
Ma'am, push natin si ma'am. It's okay, makakakayanin naman po. Reunion tayo.
Reunion ang mga Triolos desire mo.
I'll join. Hi, ma'am. Thank you very much.
Started.
All right, thank you very much. May we now call on the speakers for the next forum to please proceed to the stage. Thank you.
Lisa is Bicolana. She's from Catanduanes. And I think we're...
Ay, the island.
Yeah, the beautiful island, the happy island of Catanduanes. Yes, ma'am. And we're relatives. Aside ni Mama.
Yes. I was just waiting for Dr. All right, I'll try to keep it to 5 minutes. Yes, please. Take so much. We have seems like I'm no one cares for open forum. Yeah, I know. I'll do my best. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I'm Max Shishou from Global Green Road Institute. It's nice to see you in person. Yeah, thank you.
Hi, Marcel.
All right, Dr. Marcel, you're Mr. Silvius. Yeah, you could sit here. Thank you. And
Thank you. I'm your moderator, John. I'm
Oh, I'm sorry. Miss Genevieve will sit here, and then
Nice to meet you. I'm Yoko.
yes, please have this.
So I'll take.
Just to give a heads up, it's not really fast for the 5 minutes, so we have a little bit of time for the open forum. That would be much appreciated. Thank you. Yeah. All right, at this point, may we kindly request everyone to please head back to their seats. We will begin the last forum for today immediately. That way we can have room for question and answers afterwards.
Thank you, Mark. And we've come to the last, but certainly not the least, of the fora discussions today. And with this forum, we wanted to zoom in on one particular strategic outcome in the SDCF. So far, our approach has been the forum has been shaped from the broad, general directions, ideas on smart partnerships. And then in the second fora, we've heard about localizing actions. We've seen how diverse the community of development there is, how broad this population of partners we have in implementing this
Sustainable Development Framework. So now we have designed a forum where we're going to zoom in on the subject of climate finance. And I'm very happy that we have the pleasure of the company of some very distinguished experts from their field who will join us in this conversation. But first, perhaps to frame this, the Philippines, of course, has a very big climate and resilience agenda. The Philippines submitted its nationally determined contributions in April 2021, and it's one of ambition, but the caveat is that 73% of these contributions will be conditional, meaning that it will be contingent to the availability of foreign financing. And so we come to the last part of the conversation today. The Philippines has definitely done its homework. We are completing the National Adaptation Plan. We are working on the priority policies and measures that will in a way be the project list that institutions can use. It's like a menu of the projects that are important to the Philippines across the fields of waste, energy, technology, transport, and ecosystems and industry. We're also completing our work on the National Implementation Plan for the NDC, as well as local climate actions of LGUs. We have invited with us colleagues from the UN, from the ADB, from the Green Growth Institute, and of course, from the private sector, CSO, to help us talk more about our readiness to be part of this big ecosystem to enable us to fund, to finance these adaptation strategies of the Philippines and ensure that this will be successful. Our first speaker will be Ms. Genevieve Lontoc. She is the director of the International Finance Policy Office of the Department of Finance, and she is in charge of the work of the DOF as the national designated authority to the Green Climate Fund. Director Genevieve, welcome, and you have the floor.
Thank you so much, ASEC. And first, let me greet everyone a pleasant morning to all our colleagues from the government, our colleagues from both the private and public sectors, our development partners, the UN. So we'd like to thank first on behalf of the department, the DFA, and the UN for convening this important forum to foster a whole of society, whole of government approach towards an inclusive, sustainable development for all. So our topic for today really on this forum is how countries use their financing policies across our fiscal policies. So from the Department of Finance perspective, we recognize the integral role of finance, not only in the discussion concerning growth and sustainable development for all, but also in expediting climate action. When we say climate action, this is both from at the national and local levels through concrete projects, activities, and programs on the ground. So notwithstanding the relevance of undertaking environmental initiatives to mitigate climate and disaster risks, we believe that environmental-related policies should enhance and not adversely affect the present and future development of our country, of course, nor should it hamper the attainment of better living conditions for the Filipino people. So despite the progress that we have achieved in terms of our path towards a low carbon and resilient economy, we understand and we recognize that there are still implementation gaps and financing gaps. In the previous forum, we have listened to one of the speakers said that, of course, financing is important. It really is important in our road to a low carbon and climate resilient economy. So there are still evident gaps in relation to the 2030 Agenda Sustainable Development, according to the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development 2023, World Investment Report, this is the most recent report that we could gather, the estimated annual financial gap for developing countries to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals amounts to 4 trillion USD, while the Sharm el-Sheikh implementation plan underscored an estimated 4 to 6 trillion USD per year. These are the amount needed to transition to a low-carbon economy. So in response, the Philippines, through the efforts of our government agencies, various sectors, in their respective initiatives to contribute to achieving a climate-resilient economy. On top of this, the DOF, in its own mandate to mobilize resources and funding for our climate action, we are implementing a twin strategy of mainstreaming sustainable finance. Through policy harmonization across a whole of government and a whole of society structure, of course, we want to foster collaboration and partnerships through various sectors of the society, as well as mobilizing all financing for sustainable programs, activities, and projects. So we also recognize that the United Nations Sustainable Development Cooperation Framework 2024 to 2028 will contribute to enhancing the quality and quantity of financing towards the achievement of our SDGs and, of course, our commitments in the Paris Agreement. So we at the DOF believe that financing sustainable and climate action should not be a competing priority with our own development goals. Rather, it should be treated as indispensable part of our economic growth and development. So to simultaneously achieve this, the sustainable goals outlined, of course, we have our own national climate plans. The overarching would be the Philippine Development Plan, of course, the PDP 2023 to 2028, and climate change objectives set forth in the country's first ever submitted nationally determined contributions, and of course, the forthcoming finalization of the National Adaptation Plan. So we recognize the importance of international cooperation in all this, and the means of implementation to undertake our development and climate goals. This is where our development partners, all stakeholders, both from the private and public sector come in. I think in the interest of time, we need to go to the specifics. I think I'd better reserve all the initiatives of the department in terms of achieving our sustainable development goals so that I could give ample time for the rest of the speakers to deliver their own initiatives and progress so far. We are happy to take all your questions later in the forum. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Lontok. I think you have given us a snapshot of the Philippine approach to integrate climate action in our financial policy, and I think you delivered a good first presentation in this forum. Next in our list, we have invited Ms. Yoko Watanabe, Director of Environment of the ADB. We have asked her to talk about global and regional funding initiatives to bring synergies. And mostly, in particular, we wanted her to share with us practical lessons and perspectives from the rich experience of ADB in working in this region to help us along this discourse. She has 25 years of experience in biodiversity and natural resource management, having worked also in UNDP in New York as the contact point for the Global Environment Facility. She also has experience with the World Bank country office, and also in Rwanda, and of course, prior to that, the World Wildlife Fund. Ms. Watanabe, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for inviting the Asian Development Bank here for this special occasion for celebrating the UN Day. and also particularly highlighting on the recently concluded UN Sustainable Development Cooperation Framework that highlights the real need for climate action in an integrated and also cooperative manner among all agencies. So, ADB is really excited to be part of this conversation. And as we all know, the Asia and the Pacific region is among the most vulnerable when it comes to climate change, as well as the biodiversity loss. And Genevieve already mentioned about the clear gap in financing, as well as actions on the ground in this region. And not only on the climate change gap that is trillions, there are biodiversity loss and biodiversity gap of over $700 million over the years. And there's a real need to put actions together and have a green and resilient economy and offer and we think that this is the only really path to have a long-lasting growth in line with a sustainable development goal. And in that regard, as you may know, ADB aspire to be a climate bank of the Asia and the Pacific region. We have committed to invest $100 billion up to 2030. And we are really gearing up on the climate actions based on our newly established Climate Change Action Plan. And that also includes the nature-based solution to climate change and also society problems, and also really looking into the social equity issue, including the vulnerable populations, the women's group, the indigenous peoples, the youth. We have been discussing on this today in the earlier panel for local action, and that really is close to my heart as I worked on for decades at UNDP before joining. And for that matter, too, I'm so delighted to be here for the UN Day and sort of build on my past experience and bringing in that finance angle from the ADB side. So just discuss on those matters. As you know, ADB is providing both technical and financial support to developing countries in the region, and climate change is really the core of what we do right now, and mainstream that into sector works like infrastructure, energy, social development, as well as transportation and all that. And in our experience that there is increasing coherence in national policies in bringing together the environment, the climate action, and social equity issues in a more coherent manner under particularly the national determined contributions that each governments are responsible for. But we also see that there is a whole lot more to be done to really achieve lower carbon development and addressing the nature losses. And for that matter, we really figure that the nature-based solution is one of the key sort of initiatives that we can coherently work together in partnership. And so, for example, from the ADB side, we're currently working on a regional flyway initiative that is jointly initiated by ADB and BirdLife and other partners. And by basically supporting the 50 most important wetlands in the region, 12 actually is included in Philippines itself. But this is not only addressing a biodiversity loss and interest for the birds to survive, but actually the wetlands actually sequester and also store carbons, and healthy ecosystem can have that services and function much more. And also by conserving these areas and working on natural resource management, this provides more economic opportunity for local communities and income generation, and increase the livelihood improvement chances in the local communities. So we are really investing more on these type of more coherent and integrated projects than ever, so that we're not working in a sort of siloed approach by sector, but working in a more ministerial and department coming together, and local community, private sector, and all others are engaged in a coherent manner. Another last initiative that I also wanted to highlight is that we also recognize that transition to a climate action and climate future really requires a transition period for local community. So for that matter, in COP27 last year in Egypt, ADB actually announced a Just Transition Support Platform, which helps countries implement more practical just transition approaches to meet their goals for the Paris Agreement, and basically support local communities and also individuals to develop the capacity to act on and benefit from the climate change actions. And in that regard, we figure that the social protection programs will play a critical role for this just transition, supporting the development member countries, and particularly the civil society and women's group and others. And so moving forward, we are really committed to working on not only on individual programs, but more on a programmatic and transformative way by working on also policy-based loans and others that in Philippines, actually, we launched last year the first climate change policy-based loan, which brings in actually fisheries and also farming and others to really address the reducing greenhouse gas emission. And we have been, with the agriculture loan as well, close to $1 billion is being invested to really increase the climate resilience and low carbon future. So with that, I just really wanted to also highlight that with the UN agencies here and other partners, and particularly the government of Philippines, we're really looking forward to having a long-term sort of more strategy, building on the UN Sustainable Development Cooperation Framework. We're also working on a country program strategy that builds on this, and really moving forward with a strong collaboration and working in one team to ensure that we can have a brighter future for the next generation to come. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Watanabe. I think you have shared some very important views on your observations. For example, the increasing coherence in government programs, but also you made a call for increasing collaborative work and also synergy, a call for synergy. You have touched upon areas of work, programs that are well within, in the middle of the SDCF, particularly, I think, outcomes 2 and 3. And we would be happy to take lessons from the rich experience of ADB, so we can go for more programmatic and strategic programs going ahead. You also touch upon nature-based solutions, and I think it ties up pretty well with the presentation at the beginning of the conference made by Executive Director Mandita Lim. And it also ties up very, very well, seamlessly with, I think, the next presentation, because the Green Growth, Global Green Growth Initiative, we have with us the country representative, Mr. Marcel Silvius. One of his roles, aside from being the country representative, is he is also the GGGI Deputy Director for Asia. And he is covering support to GGGI programs in Thailand, Laos, and Cambodia. And there is actually a very strong emphasis on nature-based solutions in your program in Southeast Asia. Mr. Silvius, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. Delighted to be here. So yeah, I've been asked to talk about how climate finance can help the Philippines to move towards climate resilient and inclusive transition. This picture is from the Parik Women Group in Mindoro Oriental. They're producing calamansi, one of our little projects in Philippines, where I wanted to start with this slide because it shows that the transition does not only need to happen at the international level through UN agencies or at the national level through policy development and finance initiatives, but it needs to particularly happen on the ground, in the communities and by the communities. And it's these people that take the highest risks, that are being hit hardest by climate change enhanced weather events. So focus needs to be on these people. And if we talk about finance, if you talk about nature-based solutions, it's solutions for them and with them. We talk about enabling environments like the right policies, the right finance mechanisms, also the finance mechanism, not just to raise money, like green bonds or the Green Climate Fund, but to get access to funding for these people. I think that's very important. So besides those enabling environments of policy and finance, there are two other enabling environments that generally are being overlooked. One of the key enabling environments for these people is to have a resilient landscape in which they can implement their agriculture. Philippines having a deforestation of 90%, so only 10% of the land area is still covered in forest, is extremely vulnerable to climate change. Not just because of its geographic location, but because these forest areas have been denuded. And that makes the country extremely vulnerable to enhanced weather events. Typhoons, storms, creates floods. But in dry years, it creates more and prolonged droughts. Also, it creates more impact on the coast where the mangroves have disappeared, with storm surges, impact of saltwater intrusion. So I would like to start, before I introduce GGGI, with emphasizing the need to really focus locally. And it was a great pleasure to hear also from the earlier panel that there was a strong focus on this, including also on education for children. So GGGI is a relatively new partner, development partner. We were established in 2012 at the UN Conference on Sustainable Development. So our focus is on poverty reduction, social inclusion, environmental sustainability, and economic growth. And we're here merely to support the government, our government members, with their endeavors to create a green transition. So we have 48 member states. We're very proud to have the ex-Secretary General of the UN as our current president and chair. Our agenda is being set by our member countries. And next slide, please. The Philippines is one of our founding members. They were part of the first 12 countries to establish GGGI. So in the Philippines, we are implementing more or less all our programs on all our strategic objectives, which range from reducing greenhouse gas emissions, creation of green jobs, access to sustainable services, improved air quality, maintenance of natural capital, and adaptation to climate change. That's being translated into programs of renewable energy and energy efficiency, greenpreneurship, mobilizing green investment, sustainable waste management, sustainable transport, sustainable landscapes, and climate resilient agriculture. And to be able to do this, we support a number of government partners in the Philippines. So we have strong collaboration with DTI, with the Board of Investments, with the Department of Finance, with the delivery partner for the Green Climate Fund. And we work with DNR, Department of Transport, etc. So these are this slide shows some of these key areas of collaboration, where I again would like to emphasize that if we think about catalyzing, accelerating access to climate finance, think not just about access to finance for the government, but think about the communities. How can they access funding? At the moment, I should congratulate Genevieve that the People Survival Fund actually has substantially increased the spending this year, but the PSF is only $20 million on an annual basis. And I think this needs to be upscaled. This is a fund for the people. It gives the access to funding to communities. So I think that needs to be enhanced to at least $100 million. And I would challenge the development partners to help the finance department to indeed increase that fund. But then also within that fund, what kind of finance mechanisms or instruments can we employ to, for instance, support indigenous people in the management and the reforestation of all these denuded mountain areas in the Philippines and other local communities. There's a need for capacity building. There's a need to help communities to create the right proposals, right approaches for such reforestation at scale. But that needs these finance mechanisms that can actually reach out and bring the money to the ground. If we talk about circular bioeconomy, healthy natural ecosystems, this provides the basis for de-risking climate vulnerable agricultural communities. And so a lot of the finance will need to go into building that environmental resilience, but this requires also a lot of social structuring, and that's the fourth enabling environment that we need to help capacitate these local communities to organize themselves in association, in small and medium-sized enterprises that can underpin the need for business-based approaches for actual making the change, making that transition. If the solutions that we provide are not business-based, they will not be sustainable economically, and they will not provide the right incentives for the local communities to participate and play their part in this tremendous transition. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Silvius. I think you have established that we have an expanding galaxy of actors and initiatives, and this should all be part of a big coherent collaboration to advance the Philippine climate and green growth agenda. You've also touched upon a very important point in this conversation, and this is about communities at the center of all our work, or our collaboration and partnerships. And I think our next and last, definitely not the last, speaker this afternoon is exactly the person that that puts us right where we should be and where we should be looking at as partners in this big enterprise of supporting the Philippines' climate smart and climate resilience agenda. We have with us Mr. John Leo Algo, National Coordination of Action Klima Pilipinas. He is, this is the largest CSO network for climate action, and he also serves as a deputy director for the programs and campaigns of Living Laudato Si Philippines. He was the youngest author of the first Philippine Climate Assessment Report, and I believe he has many things to share with us this afternoon about engaging young people, but also monitoring and assessment, innovation of methodologies to track climate change impact in our work. John, thank you for joining us.
It's already afternoon. Okay. So good day to everyone. There we go. So while the presentation is loading, allow me to put a disclaimer to my presentation for the next 5 to 7 minutes. I would like to take a different approach from most of the presentations you've heard today. Firstly, I think it's important to emphasize the title of this presentation, Injecting Youth Perspectives in Climate Action and Recommendations on Assessing Environment and Climate Impacts. So how exactly do we do that? Because I'm sure everyone here has heard a bunch of youth speakers from the last couple of years, a bunch of youth forums, and the overall message is basically the youth is the future, right? The youth has to be meaningfully integrated, right? Like you've heard multiple versions of those. I'm not saying that's not true, because that's absolutely true. But what I'm going to try to do instead for the next 5 to 7 minutes is take a different approach to familiar concepts that I think we're all familiar with. Are we ready? Let's do this. There we go. Okay, so I just like to point out that the climate negotiations are happening in basically next week, starting in Dubai. And it will be the 29th Conference of Parties. It would have been 31 years since the COP has started. So these are some of the scenes that are related to the Conference of Parties. Last year, the Children and Youth Pavilion was first hosted under the COP. And on the other side, back in Glasgow in 2021, children are part of one of the largest climate strikes you've ever seen. Why am I mentioning COPs? Because I was listening to the two honorable secretaries earlier, and the way they were introduced, they have 30 to 35, 40 years of experience. They have more experience in their work than I have experience in this world, period. And so do all of these people on the slide. Half of the world's population are children and youth. In the Philippines, the ratio is probably higher than 50%. And yet, how many times can we really say, aside from platforms like this, of course, that the concerns of the children and youth are really meaningfully integrated? I mean, of course, it's not an easy task. There's 58 million children and youth in the Philippines alone. How do you ensure that all of their concerns are represented properly and even listened to? I'm not saying to people in this room, I'm talking about in general. How can we ensure that that is the case? Because as a concept, it's in the title of the document that we're highlighting today, Sustainable Development Cooperation Framework. You cannot be sustainable if you don't take into account future generations. That is in the definition of sustainable development. Meet the needs of the present without compromising the ability of the future generations to meet their needs. And our needs, our concerns, the impacts we're going to face based from the IPCC reports, they're going to get a lot worse without drastic interventions now. That's what sustainability is about. Next slide, please. Thank you. Okay, so again, we talk about how the youth are doing things, on the ground or things like that. So instead of just talking about Action Klima Pilipinas in itself, again, I'll take a different approach, and I like to instead highlight the initiatives of other groups here in the Philippines that truly include youth empowerment. On your lower right-hand side of the screen, you will see a scene from the recently concluded Local Conference of Youth that was organized by the Positive Development Network in collaboration with part of the UN, UNICEF, I believe, the DNR as well, and the National Youth Commission. So the Local Conference of Youth, the goal of that is very simple. All the climate and environment concerns and recommendations of the youth in the Philippines will be forwarded to the government. And then the youth will also be informed about what happens at COPs, what happens with the laws and policies that are being implemented here in the Philippines. And yet for the 100 participants of that LCOI, this event is very important to them because this is an opportunity for them to not just feel involved, but to really be involved in one way or another. A platform for them to have the ability to be listened to by policymakers. That's number one. Number two, at the top of your screen, you will see a group shot. I wish I got a better photo of an action shot because this is actually Food Rescue PH. The concept of Food Rescue PH is very simple. If a restaurant or any other establishment has excess food, instead of going straight to the bin, how about we give them to those who need to eat? It's a very simple concept on paper, and yet they have to be done anyway because that's a representation, that's an indication of the inequality and inequity that exists, not just in terms of finance, but the basic necessities, food. And of course, here in the Philippines, And I've done a lot of talks in the last 7 years. It's been 7 years. I've done a lot of talks, and whenever I ask most, actually not just classrooms, I'm talking about even government sector sometimes, a few communities, civil society organizations themselves, and of course a lot of universities, I always ask this question: what is the most common type of food waste in the Philippines? Wait, I spoiled the answer. What is the most common type of waste in the Philippines? And they will always say plastic. It's not. It's food waste. Yes, it is food waste. That's from the report of the National Solid Waste Management Commission back in 2015. And actually, at a global scale, that's also the same thing. So, of course, we should focus on reducing our plastic consumption and production, for that matter. But why aren't we focusing as much on food waste? And that's why Food Rescue PH exists. That's why groups like that exists. We talk about innovation, and that's why I put a question mark there. Because sometimes when it comes to innovation, that doesn't necessarily mean we need to invent this revolutionary technology. Sometimes innovation, at its most basic definition, is simply about new approaches and its application. Something that seems basic, sometimes it can be the most important solution. We just take it for granted. But hopefully under the UN SDCF, under all other cooperation platforms for which we will implement the SDGs, we should not take those for granted. Even the importance of communication, like on the lower left-hand side, that's the Association of Young Environmental Journalists here in the Philippines. Environmental journalism, of which I am also a part of, it is not as easy of a concept to realize, to implement in the field. Because environmental journalism, if I can borrow the mayor's quote earlier, it's not sexy. You know what news is sexy here in the Philippines? Crime, corruption, showbiz. I'm not saying those news are not important. What I'm saying is, in proportion to the importance of the issue, environmental journalism is lagging way behind. And if you look at who the environmental journalists are in the Philippines, probably I'd say at least half of them are youth, under 30. Communication is important for cooperation. It's basically the essence of any kind of partnership. If you miscommunicate, you will not be able to accomplish anything. It's that simple. So again, that goes back to the point of innovation. It's not just about being complicated. It's about delivering results while remembering our nature. Speaking of nature, next slide, please. So as our moderator just said earlier, I am part of the first ever Philippine Climate Change Assessment Report. And I give all the credit in the world to all these esteemed scientists in that picture. I do not belong in the same category as them. I'm going to admit that now. These are some of the brightest scientists in the country, and I even go as far as saying in the world. Many of these scientists, like Father Jet Villarin of the Manila Observatory, Dr. Redel Lasco of the Oscar M. Lopez Center, Dr. Faye Cruz, the late, great Dr. Gemma Narisma as well, both from MO. These are IPCC contributing scientists. And the purpose of the PhilCCA is, again, going back to the point of you don't have to be complicated to innovate. It's simply about a collection of all the literature in the Philippines, summing up climate science, adaptation, and mitigation, patterned after the IPCC, because that's a glaring need for the Philippines at the time. And hopefully this year, they will release the second cycle. I'm not part of that anymore because I'm a retired scientist. But the point is, how did I get involved in this kind of project? Because Dr. Gemma Narisma gave me a chance. That's it. It's about giving an opportunity. And if we give the youth an opportunity, whether in the sciences or any other field, you can bet all your money in the world that they're going to do everything they can to really do their best. Because that's what the youth want to do in general. They want to contribute. So next slide, please. Speaking of contributing, and that brings me to my final point, inclusivity. Now, my fellow panelists here mentioned the National Adaptation Plan, the EDB Climate Change Action Plan, the NDC implementation plan, the PSF. I have been part of consultations for all of those implementation plans. And also the SDCF. I was invited to be part of the consultations before this, so I am very, on a personal note, I'm very happy with the document itself. So thank you for that. And to tell you the truth, in terms of inclusivity here in the Philippines for climate and environment policymaking, if I may be allowed to freely speak here, there has been a tremendous improvement at the national level. I know it doesn't seem much, but there has actually been tremendous improvement in the last 5 years, from my observation. But that's on a relative scale. On an absolute scale, of course, there still needs to be improvement. But it all starts with inclusivity. And to finish off, I'd just like to highlight one more point before we go to the open forum. There we go. Invest in our future. So earlier, it has been pointed out about financing, funding, a bunch of other financial plans. Of course, we need those financing. But that's not the only investment that matters in terms of sustainable development. We also need to invest our willpower, our attitude. We need to invest our time, our resources, so we can really properly implement this UN SDCF, so we can truly achieve the SDGs, and more importantly, as everyone else has mentioned before, to make sure that no one is left behind.
Thank you, Mr. Algo. There's nothing more heartening for the UN and the DFA to hear that the youth approves of the consultations and the inclusive process by which we have come to this SDCF, and also for affirming the narrative of partnerships that inform the way the Philippines has approached climate action policy. I think he talked very strongly about empowered communities as key to change, as key to solutions that are rooted, that are oriented to context, and that brings everyone on board. And I think he made a very strong point about putting young people and communicators, thought leaders of this generation at the center of our climate action. We were in the program, we're supposed to end this forum at 12:15. I think we've done well in covering. I think as a frequent traveler, I always like it when planes depart late and make it right on time, not that late, considering the late departure. So I think we were able to do that. Thank you all for your cooperation in keeping to your time, but also in making your presentations concise. Perhaps we have, before the closing remarks, perhaps I can open the floor for 1 or 2 questions from attendees. So I think people are eager to have their lunch and to listen to the closing remarks from our Undersecretary. So thank you all. Let's give a big hand to this panel. Thank you, Director Lontok, Ms. Watanabe, Mr. Silvius, and of course, Mr. Algo.
Thank you very much, Assistant Secretary Maria Teresa T. Almoel, and all our panelists for that wonderful discussion and insightful thoughts, especially when it comes to climate financing. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we are now towards the end of our program. I know we all wished we had more time to discuss these interesting topics. So now, to give his closing remarks, we are pleased to call on Honorable Charles C. Jose, Undersecretary for Multilateral Affairs and International Economic Relations.
Thank you. I'm happy that we were able to finish on time. But nevertheless, most of us must be feeling hungry by now. So let me just deliver a very brief closing remarks just to give a fitting ending to our event this morning. I would like to thank everyone present here for your active participation and valuable contributions to our very first United Nations Day Forum in the Philippines. I would like to especially thank the panelists and speakers, the representatives of the UN agencies in the Philippines, and the members of the Diplomatic Corps. The DFA endeavored to come up with a UN Day celebration that is substantive, memorable, and useful. I recall that as we neared the signing of the UNSDCF in October, and inspired by the President's call to deliver meaningful change and transformation through this cooperation framework, we pondered on how to ensure that our new generation partnership with the UN would have a positive impact on the lives of the Filipino people. We hope that this forum has helped us identify vital steps, big and small, to promote the strategic priorities defined in the cooperation framework. We hope that it has promoted a deeper understanding of the document and the potentials it offers to us as agents of change and partners in transformative collaboration. Today's forum was enriched by the wisdom and experience shared today between and among brilliant minds representing the government, UN agencies, other international organizations, academe, and civil society. Each of you provided useful insights as we take steps ahead to configure optimal cooperation templates that will ensure the success of the Philippines-UN partnership in the next 5 years. We picked up ideas on how our joint projects going forward can be smarter in impact, efficiency, and scale, how it can be more inclusive, innovative, and supportive to local actors, and how it can focus more on fit-for-purpose solutions that build resilience as well as sustainability. In the last sub-forum, we heard about the intersectionality of development financing and climate action agenda, and multitudes of initiatives and voices that we can harness to be able to foster closer regional and global equity on these issues. As the Secretary said at the start, we see this as only the beginning of an engagement that should help us bring forward solutions and synergy in our efforts to deliver the promise of this framework as a platform for supporting not only the Philippines' economic trajectory, but also leverage Philippines' strengths and engagement as a partner in South-South cooperation and advocate of many causes. A case in point is the Asia-Pacific Ministerial Conference on Disaster Risks to be held in Manila in 2024, which will give the Philippines the opportunity to help advance the regional discourse and cooperation on climate financing for development and innovative solutions. As I close, allow me to underscore the necessity for all government agencies, UN bodies, development partners, and civil society to fully embrace the principles and vision embodied in the SDCF. Next year, the NDCF comes into effect. I think I share the excitement of everyone involved in this process to witness more interactive and Philippine-driven processes for the crafting of UN programs in the Philippines. We are eager to establish new benchmarks for the UN development system as it meets its very important mandate of supporting states to achieve the SDGs by 2030, here in the Philippine context. We sincerely thank you all for your active participation today. The DFA enjoins you to stay engaged in this conversation to optimize the cooperation framework. in being part of this journey between the Philippines and the UN and as actors in our nation's success story. May I invite you all to a lunch where we can continue our spirited conversations. Thank you very much and mabuhay.
Thank you very much for that message, Yusek Charles. And as mentioned by Yusek Charles, we are now having lunch. May we ask everyone to find their way back to the back part of the room, to our round tables over there, and we invite you to partake of the special selections prepared by the wonderful chefs of Fairmont Makati. Thank you so much, everyone. It was a pleasure to have you here. And yes, let's continue our engagements at the back. Please enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Thank you.